as you look at all this data, and sure, and a lot of ink has been spilled on this, a lot of talk has gone into this, but what kind of generational differences do you see? Obviously, we're looking at Gen Z.
Hmm.
That's absolutely the recruitable population. What's different about this generation than the ones that you and I were a part of?
Yeah, it's 100% quality of service. That is the number one fact. You can bin all of the things that we've talked about in quality of service. And so it really goes into why. So we're in a competitive environment. We are competing for talent.
Mm.
And so why would a young person um, decide to join the Navy? In a generation past, or maybe even my parents or my grandparents, they said, this is a steady job with good money and pension and health care. This is good for you. And today's generation, which I hate to say that like I'm a really old person, but today the expectations for quality of your life is that you have better work-life balance. I've had lots of young people say to me, I don't want to spend the next 20 years of my life only at sea and not participating in my family. They have expectations for living in barracks. So CNO announced that, no sailor lives afloat. When I first joined the Navy, E4 and below lived on ships. That's just the way it was. Everything you owned fit in a sea bag, or it was contained in your locker on the ship. And we recognize that that's just not good enough anymore, that the quality of life expectations are higher, and we owe our sailors that. And so I think, as CNO especially puts sailors first and saying, this is important to recruiting and retaining people on delivering on these higher quality of service expectations, we will continue to be on that pathway moving forward. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's exactly the right thing to do as a reward for the top talented people that we are bringing in here that are making this a choice when they have lots and lots of other choices. There are lots of employers out there that give people tuition assistance, that give them healthcare insurance, that give them, opportunity for advancement and education. And so as we say to people, here's an organization you should be a part of, we need to make sure that we are also signaling that not only do we have high purpose, which we have in spades, we have a mission that, as we celebrate the 250th year of the Navy, a mission that continues to guarantee the prosperity of the United States. But also, we're investing in you as a future leader of the organization. So we're going to, join the Navy, see the world, have adventure, get an education, right? Mm-hmm. So things that our parents did are still true today. And we need to make sure we're delivering on that.
Now, in a previous conversation we had, you also mentioned looking at the sailor's sea bag. That is the set of clothes that they're issued at boot camp that they take with them,
Mm-hmm.
and some changes that might be coming. Could you
Yeah.
talk through those?
Absolutely. Uniforms are always a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
So the SECNAV has directed we review the sea bag and streamline the sea bag. First of all, it just makes sense, to not burden sailors with maintaining all these different uniforms. So second of all, it's expensive. So we want uniforms that are functional, that fit well, that are durable, that sailors feel proud to wear, and rules that make sense. So we're looking at those. So for example, we have 2 PT uniforms. Why? One, we've already made a decision. We're going to phase out the gold, the blue and gold older uniform. That's already out there. And so by 2027, it'll be 1 PT uniform. That makes sense. And it is also higher quality. It is more in line with what, if you were to go to a running store out in town, it's more in line with the kinds of clothing that you would find there as well. So that's good. Another thing is boots. So we have lots and lots of different kinds of boots. If you see 10 sailors in a room, there might be, 8 different pairs of boots on people. And so we've said, why are we doing this? Does this really make sense? Does this meet the requirement for their working conditions? What are we doing this for? And so again, streamlining, the sea bag. We are looking at some of our dress uniforms, do we have too many dress uniforms, and making that less burdensome on people. So we've also instigated the Navy Uniform Board. So the Navy Uniform Board consists of the Fleet and Force Master Chiefs as the direct representation of their enlisted sailors. So sailors should give their Fleet and Force Master Chiefs their input on uniforms because they're their representation. We have been having that board meet about once a month because we have some really important things that we want to take care of with speed. But so they should feel free to do that, whatever things aren't working. We're also working on fit, and especially for women. We've recognized for some time that the model of fit was not right, that it was out of date. And some of that, gosh, when I was a midshipman in the ROTC program, we were still wearing uniforms that the waves had worn, right? And so recognizing that, keeping in pace with modern women and the need. So this is a funny example. In the women's service dress blue pants, my pocket is big enough for my identification card. That's it. And so I engaged with some junior sailors and they say, we don't understand this pocket situation. And I said, they're like, where are you supposed to put your stuff? I said, in your purse. And they're like, my purse, which, was something that, seemed intuitive to my grandmother, right? And so we owe our sailors, all of our sailors, better functionality, form, and fit for the uniforms.
So when should we expect to see some decisions on those CBAG issues?
I would think in the next couple months, we will see decisions as they work through the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy and the CNO as the board presents their recommendations and their findings, and the data that goes with that. What are the costs associated with making these changes? We'll be making those changes.
Admiral Couture, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.